Xgrowth has helped B2B tech companies design campaigns that open doors in their strategic target accounts, roll out targeted ABM programs, scale ABM programs, and select the right tool and tech stack for a successful ABM initiative. These are all things Xgrowth has helped their clients with. If you're interested to learn how Xgrowth can help your firm's ABM program, check out Xgrowth at xgrowth.com.au. That's xgrowth.com.au and chat with the APAC ABM agency.
What's up, marketers, and welcome to another episode of the Growth Colony podcast. I'm Liza from Xgrowth to tell you that each episode we bring in B2B leaders to chat about the yeses and nos to achieving those everyday wins in the marketing world. Whether you're new to the B2B game, working at a leadership level, or even just showing some interest, we know you'll love the episode. So grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the show.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode. I'm Shaheen Hoda with Xgrowth, and today I'm talking to Hamish Grant, Vice President of Marketing and Safety Culture, about how safety culture, a $2 billion Australian unicorn, is implementing a product-led growth model. We're going to touch on some of the learnings, some of the advice, mistakes, and the outcomes. Hamish, thanks a lot for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Absolute pleasure. I'm super excited about this because I don't feel like enough people talk about PLG, product-led growth, in Australia. It is a underrepresented topic in this market. I mean, I'd love to kind of dive in. We are going to dive in your opinion, why that is. But before we do that, let's get some definitions right. How do you define PLG at Safety Culture?
I think there's probably many different definitions of PLG, but look, at the end of the day, for us, it's really just about our customers, and it's really just about decreasing that time to value and decreasing the risk for customers. And if you have that mindset, then it's something that you can easily get your head around, and that if the product is working hard to serve the customer and provide the customer value, and you're really focusing your efforts and your experiences around that topic, then by its very nature you'll have a PLG strategy. Of course, you need a freemium type model to expose that value to the product and de-risk that for the customers. But once you have those sort of pillars in place, then away you go.
Got it. Okay. Let's you talked about the pillars. What are those pillars?
Yeah, look, for us, academically, when you consume a lot of the academic research on PLG, they talk about, designing for the customer, making sure that you deliver value before you're capturing value, and making sure your product is really the lever for growth. And while I think that, we tick all of those boxes, in reality, safety culture was really built to serve the end user from the very start. And so when it was launched, it existed to solve a really common problem for a lot of certainly safety managers doing compliance, was that the whole process was paper-based. And so they would get their clipboard and they'd go and inspect a certain item, and then they'd go back to their little cubicle in their warehouse or wherever, jump on their laptop and write up this report and send it across to their managers and go, look, everything's fine with that particular thing. So in hindsight, it feels like it's just a natural right for a digital solution, and to this day it still remains very relevant, that particular part of the value proposition. But at the end of the day, putting that tool, a digital tool, in their hands that they could walk around on to replace their clipboard, and the design of the application itself being so user-friendly and so simple, and was really, I guess, cutting edge at the time, and its simplicity, and that really, and we still hold those values true today, is that when we think customer and when we design these experiences for these frontline staff, making sure that simplicity is really at the heart of it. That they don't need the complexity of a full I don't know if you use an ERP system as an example, a hugely complex beast of software. When you're in the field trying to perform a specific task, you just don't need that level of complexity, and you just need to be able to do the job. And so our design has always been focused on the user from the outset. And then, secondly, when it comes to decreasing time to value, we've had the product's always been free. And that's something that when Luke created iAuditor and rolled it out, that was something I think working with his mentors as well, and had a lot of working closely with the guys at Atlassian and other companies to understand what was the right growth model. But I think that regardless of your model that you choose, there's something really customer centric about PLG. There's something that just feels right about it. There's something that it's if you are bullish about the value of the product that your product brings the world, then why don't you prove that, and give it to your customers, allow them to get value, and allow them to understand how they could use it for the long term. Don't force them through a sales cycle when they haven't got that value, and they're essentially taking a bet that you're going to deliver that value to them. Prove to them that you can deliver that value. And then, should they get that value, then of course they're more than likely willing to pay for it. And there's just some real simple concepts in PLG like that, which often get overcomplicated and often get complex and arguably political between departments as businesses get bigger. But decreasing that time to value through a freemium model, but also as it applies to marketing, and life cycle, making sure that you're serving up those experiences to those customers to make sure that they have that confidence in the product, that should they want to expand, and then create that expansion mechanism. Always making sure that customers can hand raise at any point is also key. The digital experiences and the machines will only get you so far when there's some complexity, and at the end of the day, we're all humans, and sometimes it just helps to speak to a human. And so we always make sure that option is available, and we don't just rely solely on a digital experience, although it's very comprehensive and very much there. A customer can always reach out to us, whether they need support or they actually want to talk to a success person. They can talk to us at any point. And then I guess the third point, is product is the main lever for growth, and for safety culture, that is 100% the case. And so everything is centered around that. So our acquisition strategy is always centered around the product. It's centered around public library and content. We create a lot of content that customers find valuable and that they search for, and that they come in and then we offer them the opportunity to take this content into essentially a checklist format and into the product, and just trying to be as helpful as we can to kickstart their journey, whether it's a digitization journey or an improvement journey or whatever it is that they're going on. That we provide that utility through our acquisition, and as a result, our sign-up numbers are in the tens of thousands, sometimes much more than that per month, and which seems huge. And for all the B2B marketers out there, probably I wish I had those kind of numbers. And while I can say that's definitely the case, I'm very thankful for those numbers. It's also a challenge, and it's a challenge to provide those unique experiences. But it's a good challenge to have. I'll say that. But it's not only from an acquisition perspective; it's actually through to activation and expansion. And the product serves as that expansion tool as well. And of course, we make sure that if a very large customer comes in, that they have that experience that's really relevant to them, and then they have the opportunity to speak to someone because they've just got more complexity. They're not a small business that's solving a singular problem. So they more often than not, they would like to speak to someone, and we make sure that connection happens. And so but it all starts with the product and getting value from the product.
So, that last point, getting value from the product, I feel like it is a concept that blows a lot of people's minds, where it's like, what are you talking about? That there is someone that they can talk to, but it's designed that they wouldn't need anyone to talk to, right? And I think a lot of people and a lot of businesses are based on that sales model And it's that sales-led model where there are people, there's a salesperson that's going to hold your hand and take you through that process. Has any elements of safety culture been sales-led where it got transformed to PLG, or was it really from the ground up, it was built on PLG, and that's always been the case?
I think that was sort of one of the fourth points that I was keen to make is our interpretation of the levers of PLG and why safety culture has been successful. It's a cultural thing. I think the more I think about it is that PLG is ingrained in our culture, not just in the marketing folks, not just the product folks, but also what we refer to as the go-to-market team. Right? Yes, there is a sales function within there. But there's a heavy success function and a support function, and it's really success that drives the business success for us as a company, but obviously the success for customers, and it's really cultural. And so that's one big thing that safety culture does incredibly well, is making sure that everyone, as they come into the business, understand that this is our model and understand that we're here to help customers be successful. And we're really genuine about that. Not as we don't pay lip service to that. Like, we're trying to figure out new use cases to help these customers, to try and to really help them to achieve their objectives, and to make sure that they understand how everything works and how to configure things properly. And we've really been over backwards to provide that experience. And I think we're actually quite famous for our support, which is really great and great to have. But yeah, I think it's really culture, and if everyone, including the traditional sales function, is orientated towards the PLG model and understands that they have a very critical part to play in this PLG model, and they play that at the right time, i.e. when the customer has got value and has put their hand up and is ready to go, then that will play to their advantage in the future, right? So there's arguably a few things worse for a salesperson is to speak to do cool downs on cold leads every day. That's they don't last very long doing that, and they don't like it, and I totally understand why that's the case. But I mean, imagine if you had if you're a salesperson in your list view and in Salesforce, you're seeing 100 new leads every day that are associated to you or sent to you, and they are customers, already using the product, already understand the value, already have an interpretation of how they could use it and how they could expand. And your job was not necessarily to sell, it's actually just to guide them into what is the right use cases for them to deploy, how they can get the most out of the platform, and then close the deal. Right? Like it's an incredible place to be when you have this flow of really warm customers that have already experienced. So a lot of the in a PLG context, the product has done the selling for you in many ways through the funnel. And it's not to say that they simply just take the order. They don't do that at all. They add a huge amount of value at that point, but they're not educating why auditor at the very start, or why safety culture at the very start, or why this at the very start, and then taking them through our qualification criteria and doing it. Although we have those components, it's not up front. The customer is experiencing that value as they go through the experience with safety culture. And again, it's a combination of digital and people.
Where do sales usually come in? Is it they've converted and they're using the customer as a freemium user, they've converted freemium to a paid subscription, and the sales team come in for expansion? Like, where is the introduction of sale? Where do sales, which sounds very much like a kind of a lot more closely aligned with customer success, in some of the other organizations, but where does that sales function come in?
Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes it's tempting to think about this in a really linear way, like when you're doing a little customer journey map or whatever. It's like next step, which they never follow, right? Every customer
exactly
map ends in failure in some way. But because people I guess consume your content and go on their experiences according to them, not to your master plan that you have in place. But for us, the sales can be, or go to market can be involved up front. Or in the middle, or towards the end of the journey. It really depends, and it happens dynamically. And so, we use algorithmic. So customer comes in, signs up. We use algorithmic scoring which is based on what we know to be a type of customer that converts to a certain amount of revenue or a number of seat counts, which have the potential to expand. And we use that scoring initially to determine what type of experience that the customer should go on, whether that is if they're a smaller business, then we'll definitely point them towards all of the resources required to get them up to speed and to get them going. And then, should they see the value? And again, we're more than happy for customers to stay in free forever. We have customers that have been free customers for 10 years. It just doesn't bother us. We will never try and convert those people. I think we will need those. We need those customers as well. They have great goodwill towards the product. They probably talk about the product with their friends, and that helps to accelerate the virality of the product. But we don't get hung up on the cost to serve those free customers or anything like that. It's just we want to build a big free base, and then that converts through into revenue, should they be the right type of customers, and should they have the right problems to solve. But we send them through that experience, and then they're offered to go on to trial, if they're getting the value, and then they go through into what we refer to as a self-serve customer. And that self-serve customer, as a paid premium plan, paid subscription, they have access to all the functionality within that plan, and a lot of configuration is out of the box, but they can still raise their hand and come and have a chat to us if they want to. It's not necessarily that we hiding phone numbers.
You're shutting them out,
making it really hard. Just not really interested in that too. If people have got some genuine questions, then we should be providing the answers and making sure that they're having that experience. And who knows, that small team might not actually be a small business. It could just be a small team in a large org. And, sometimes we don't know that if they've signed up with personal email addresses and this type of stuff. And so we'll always edge to over-serving those customers and helping those customers to be successful, so that, they at least think of us, or that they can expand. But that's sort of into the self-serve motion. And then from self-serve, we get a lot of larger customers that will come in and maybe have a 20-seat deal sitting in self-serve, and they're just really happy just to do their own thing. And they actually prefer it if we don't contact them. We're like, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And they can stay there. But they're as far as number of customers are concerned, they're I guess a smaller percentage, but they're obviously a big percentage of revenue. And then, but should that self-serve customer, expand rapidly or perform key moments within the product, as well as, we get an understanding that they are, of a high potential customer, then we'll serve them up to our success folks and make sure that they're on their radar to assist them. And we do that all dynamically. And so that whole thing, that's what I mean by it doesn't necessarily happen linearly, as in go from free to self-serve to managed. It could go free to managed, it could go, even in the top of the funnel, sign up through to manage directly. So we it just depends on the size of the customer and the potential of the customer and the complexity of the customer, what journey we put them on. So it can go to market engagement can happen at any time or multiple times actually through that experience. It just depends on how the customer interacts with the product and their potential.
Interesting. And that kind of leads very nicely into my next question, which a lot of people, when talking about PLG, the thought is that PLG is really designed for SMB, not necessarily for enterprise. What we were talking about and you were mentioning is that you have the scoring models where allows you and the team to identify accounts that might be of higher value to the company, might be enterprise, might be potential for materializing more revenue, and then there is a different motion design for those, again, if there are certain triggers activated. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, I think there's a common mistake here that companies make, is that PLG is a bottoms-up model rather than a top-down sales model. So bottoms-up relies on people getting value from the product and a large number of people getting value from that product within that organization. And then it ladders up and it ladders up and it ladders up to it gets on someone's radar that's senior, or, the procurement people get involved and say, hey, look, I've got, 100 people charging back to this company on their credit card. you must be providing a great service to our company. Can we talk about creating an agreement? And we go, sure, we can have that discussion, and we can get an MSA together and have that. So you can still target enterprise with a PLG model, and it's a common misconception. I think it's just you just need to be flexible in the way that those bigger companies consume from you, and also not being probably, I don't know if the right word is, sometimes companies maybe get a little bit arrogant of their own importance, and go back in and demand an MSA from an organization. But really, the individual, and like in a large organization, so say a 40,000 person company, those departments are not talking to each other every day. They don't have the same use case. They don't want their data rolled up into HQ to be examined by someone someone in the ivory tower. They've got a real problem in the field that they're looking to solve. They've got the individual department that's in South Australia does not care what the individual department in Queensland is doing in a different department, nor do they ever need to. And so in these large organizations, we will provide value to those individual teams, whatever the use cases are. And then, sometimes it ends up in a centralized agreement, and we're having an enterprise sales discussion. But the way we got to that was providing value to real people on the ground and laddering up to those moments. But it's not necessarily our objective. We quite happily have 100 customers paying on credit card within an org. It doesn't bother us. But if the business really wants to, because sometimes it makes sense for them to consolidate some of these teams into an account, and they should go and do that. And that's when we'll advise them on probably the best configuration of our product, like how to use locations better, how to get your analytics to all the results from your inspections to flow up per site and into your master account, and how you should be using actions to fix these issues that are identified, and how you should be using visual communications. And we have an opportunity to really help probably a more senior leader at that point to understand how they can turn all of the information that these small teams are pulling in from the field every day into a model that can help them with improvement, continuous improvement, and to be the mechanism that supports that improvement theory that they have in their business. So that's an opportunity to have a different type of conversation. And of course, you need different people with different skills to have those conversations, right? So there's a different person that helps people to configure an individual team in the field to solve a specific use case. There's a different type of person that you need to do that, as opposed to talking to a senior leader in a 40,000 organization. Obviously talking about ROI as customer examples, how that all works, the contractual arrangements, all those things. All those conversations are critically important, and we need those people, and we have those people in our organization that can have those conversations. But there's essentially a passing of the baton, so to speak, as you go through that.
And it requires a lot of patience. I mean, you need to build that base versus, hey, we want to close, whatever big account it is. We want to close Downer, and, we are going to go from the very top, hit the CIO and, the C-level and kind of, you have to have patience for that to build up for the sales team to kind of start engaging at that level.
You do, and you need a level of maturity and leadership, I think, to be
imagine
to really just be to be calm, I guess, and to you've got quarterly targets. Everyone's got quarterly targets. Obviously in a public environment that they're very they're always critical, I should say, but there are a bit more implications if you're in a public company. But that quarterly cycle can be detrimental to a long-term strategy. I think any business would probably say the same. But it requires patience. But you can also look at it the other way. You can spend 2 years talking to a CIO, 3 years, 4 years to do a big site-wide global deployment and deploy your solution to 40, 50,000 employees, 100,000 employees. You can do that, and companies do that, or you can get them set up, get 100 people on in a certain division, and then build to 200 and build to 300 and build to 400. over time, the economics of that make a lot of sense when they compound month on month and year on year. And next thing you know, you've had that customer for 5 years, paying you increased amounts every year because of the value they're extracting from the product. Just makes sense. I know which camp I'd rather be in, because you're also showing confidence in your product as well and the problems that you solve, and you're there with your customer, and that and as they go, and we see this time and time again. I see it all the time. Customers come in, they might buy, on the paid front, and they're buying, 10 seats, and then
it grows from there.
What typically happens, that's, we refer to that as sort of like that's like the first deal. That's just the start.
Yeah, 80% of the revenue comes after the purchase, which is Now, Hamish, what are some of the mistakes you've made, you and the team have made, and learned from implementing and maturing the PLG model at Safety Culture?
Yeah, I think I'll probably start with this question by just saying, look, there's a lot of people a lot smarter than me that implemented PLG within Safety Culture, and again, it is cultural. It is part of our DNA and how we grow our business. And so, kudos must go to them for creating that model and it being such an impressive engine that it is today. And so I sort of consider myself to be a custodian of that great work that has been done, well before me, and how can I optimize that strategy to continue its growth. So this is kind of my perspective on it. I think some of these critiques are easy to make in hindsight. And so when I look back, but again, business success doesn't happen in a linear way either, and people often forget that too. And so there's always demands. In the 10 years that our companies exist, there's been different demands at different times. Sometimes we're obviously full in growth mode for monthly active users. Sometimes we'd appreciate a bit more revenue. Sometimes we would, we can manage both of those topics at the same time, which is ideally how we would like to grow and go forward. But due to that variable nature of how businesses grow, I think we've at times started to restrict the free tier probably a little bit too much. And a few years ago, we made the decision to just open it right up. We just opened it, and so by that we would have some restrictions around the number of inspections, for example, that a company could do on the free tier before they were sent through to that premium experience. And so we removed all of those limits and was like, well, if the customer wants to do more inspections to get value, then that's absolutely fine. They should be able to do that. It's really what we really care about is larger businesses that have more teams that are extracting a huge amount of value from the product. They're the ones that should be really paying for it. And so it's essentially open with just a seat cap these days, and that has enabled us to essentially double our free team base as well in the last few years, which has just been pretty impressive. And that ultimately becomes the acquisition channel of warm customers through our model, and I think that's just the right thing to do. Yeah, it means that you're not converting as many free teams to paid customers, but we're seeing the average free team size increase quarter on quarter for the last 3 years, and so these things, by exposing this value to customers and not really getting away in their journey as much as possible, we're seeing some really great results that come off the back of this. And importantly, these customers are just in a position to solve problems without frustration. And then, when they solve those problems, that's when they're going to come in and say, look, we'd like to take 20 seats.
I love how much customer enablement is happening here.
Yeah.
There's tons of it. Hamish, why do you think PLG is not as popular? It's not as adopted. It's not as adopted in the Australian market.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure entirely that is the case. I think there's some pretty famous examples here in Australia of PLG companies, Lassie and Camber, Dovetail, Safety Culture, the list goes on. And so I think there is a large number, particularly of the earlier stage companies that are out of the gate, that have been PLG since day one. And obviously they provide a lot of inspiration for a lot of the startups that are coming through, and to try and replicate their success in some way. and you see that quite a lot. I think maybe, but also I acknowledge that I'm very much firmly in this camp now. I haven't always been in this camp. I've seen it on both sides, and so, but having been converted religiously, I guess to PLG, just because having seen the scale and just having seen how impressive it is, it's just I can't see myself going back to a traditional sales model anytime.
Yeah, and I mean the reason I say that, right, is when you look at conferences, when you look at talks, when you look at what people are really talking about in the ANZ market, right? Even I would argue you expand that into the APAC market, you don't come across a lot of people talking about PLG. I mean, there are people who talk about PLG, but there is a disproportionate number of people that would talk about all the other stuff versus PLG, where I think PLG has a much larger, let's call it, share of voice in the US market, North American market. That's what I feel and what I kind of see personally. Again, I don't know if you might be like, no, man, you're not hanging out in the right circles.
Maybe there's a bit of that, but it's also maybe who's controlling the narrative within there. Like if you think about these conversations that are spun up, whether they be at an event or who's sponsoring the event. Is it the big incumbent technology companies that are dependent on more of a traditional model, perhaps? And perhaps they're controlling the narrative. But what we are seeing globally is specific PLG software companies that are spun up to assist product departments or marketing departments that are purely B2B technology, and so that's changed significantly in the last few years. We're seeing B2B specific personalization, web personalization tools at scale, that have grown up with companies like serving companies like Notion, for example. It's interesting. So I think we are seeing a bit of a change there, but there is an incumbency to the attitude on the growth strategies in APAC. I totally concede that is the case. But perhaps the more interesting question is, why are these traditional software-led companies not considering a PLG strategy? And I think the answer to that is that, again, coming back to cultural, it's hard issues. It's really hard to change those ingrained attitudes. Like if you are a business that has been driving top-down sales and managing that, and coping with that for quarter on quarter, year on year for the last 3 years that you've been, that you've been alive, suddenly to pull back the limits and expose your product to your customers and lure them paying for it. That's
oh my goodness.
People can't get their head around that. I think sometimes tends to be if there's a more progressive CEO or the board sees the long term, we see the long term being successful in exposing our value to our product. We see all that. That makes a lot of sense to us. We should do that. But everyone else, what they fail to do is align the incentive to that, right? And then it just becomes, there's too much gravity for those sales-led companies to change into a PLG mindset. And
that's right. There's too much inertia. Got it.
Have you read the State of ABM and APAC report yet? If you have, you'll know that 59% of marketing leaders are intending to increase their ABM investment in the coming year. Even bigger news is 0% of survey respondents are going to decrease their investment. It's an exciting time for ABM in the region. Discover the state of account-based marketing in APAC today. Download the full report at abm.xgrowth.com.au/report. That's abm.xgrowth.com.au/report.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap this up with some rapid fire questions, Hamish. Let's make this happen. First question I want to ask you is, what is one resource? Could be a book, a blog, can be a podcast, whatever it is that has had a profound impact on the way you work or your way to live. What are some of those things that comes to mind?
I think that's an easy one for me, and it's a book. And for the people that know me, I often talk about this book probably ad nauseum, much to they probably get a bit annoyed with me. But to me, there's a book called Play Bigger, which is about category creation. And I felt that when I read that, and category creation is not for everyone, let's be very clear. But when I read that, I felt that a lot of my marketing career made sense to me. It made sense in the way that I think about the problem, how these things should be defined, how brand and your position and message is so important to creating and differentiating a category, and how that's really the if you really want to win, if you really want to consume the market's economics, in your particular category, then that mindset I think is critically important. And so that was a really great resource and something that I turn to quite often.
I love it. That's a good book. Play Bigger. Question number 2, if you could give one advice to B2B marketers, what would it be?
For me, is don't stay in your lane, probably. I think a lot of young marketers and all young salespeople, they really focused on doing their immediate job, and that is critically important. Right at the end of the day, that's what they're paid to do and need to do that. But I found in my career, forming relationships outside of those out of those bubbles, and speaking to the technology team, speaking to the engineers, speaking to the product people, speaking to the success and the support people, the leadership. Just really making sure that you're out of your lane and you're thinking about the whole business problem will, in my opinion, help you to really understand and help you really grow as an individual if you're really outside of your lane and really taking that on. And once you do that, then I think you're in a better position to do a better job, but also to do your job, and you have the connections within the business, because we all know there's no individual that is successful. It's really the teams that are successful, and the connections that you make. Nothing is really done in a vacuum, and even at a departmental level, everything that we do, all the bigger projects that we do have representation from the majority of the departments, and so forming those relationships outside of that, I think, is critical.
Got it. Okay. Question number 3. Who are some of the influencers that you follow?
Yeah, with PLG, I think the OpenView has probably from my opinion, got one of the most valid perspectives, and have seen this at scale and is involved in actively moving the conversation. I think that's an incredible. They're really influencing the market with what they're doing. And then I guess secondly, to me, it's not necessarily influencers. I guess by the notion that they probably could be, but just looking at marketers from other B2B companies, other B2B SaaS companies at scale, and just seeing what they're doing every day. I get a lot of inspiration from that. There's some really interesting things that the actual marketers are doing. Not the agencies, not all the other things. It's the actual marketers, following them and understanding how they're going. I guess it's also great being part of having some really well-known venture partners that back safety culture. We have access to some of the, through those networks, some of the I guess the best, most inspirational companies in the world, and sometimes it's a bit hard to get hold of them, but eventually, if you try hard enough, you really can go and speak to someone at these organizations and just take the time to learn. And more often than not, they're happy to have a conversation about what they're doing, and just a general conversation. So that's where I really learn a lot from the people that are actually doing. And they're on the front lines doing the doing.
Rather than the trenches.
Rather than the academics, yeah.
I love it. Last question. What's something that excites you about B2B today?
I think B2B's really changed a lot, in the last 12 or so years that I've really been focused in this area. I feel like, I'm not sure if it's the same at university these days, but I felt like if you go do a marketing degree, or certainly back in the day, when you did that, I think you come out thinking that marketing is all about, consumer-led goods, how many handbags can you sell? And that quickly runs out. You quickly run out of motivation, I find anyway. Selling another handbag is not going to change the world. But, if you are in B2B, and you are selling a software solution that could have flow-on effects for hundreds and thousands of people, or millions of people actually, just by changing that operation. I think that's a really great place to be, and I think you're bringing a lot of value to the world. So I think that people are getting more and more attuned to B2B marketing, and that it is actually cool. And by the nature of that, I think that attracts some really smart people, and that's what I'm most excited about, is Sometimes I sit back and, in my own team and just when we're having conversations and just in awe of the smart people that work in our company and that are attracted to our company, that are really ambitious and bring some huge ideas to the table. And that's what I'm most excited about.
Hamish, this has been an awesome conversation, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the listeners are going to take a lot of notes and a lot of insights. So thank you so much for coming on the pod.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me.
Today's episode of Growth Colony was produced by Alexander Hipwell and Liza Maywald. It was edited by Dave Samito with additional editing by Liza Maywald and music arrangement by Alexander and Liza. Special thanks to Tina Wabe. We couldn't make this show without you. Growth Colony is hosted by Shaheen Hoda, Director of Growth at Xgrowth. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe and give us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Do you think you'd be a great guest or just interested in a chat? Send through an email at podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's podcast@xgrowth.com.au. That's all for now. We'll catch you next week right here on Growth Colony.